Welcome to A Better HR Business, the podcast that looks at how HR consultants and HR tech firms grow their businesses and how they help their employers to get the best out of their people. Remember, for show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Okay, let's get started.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Great to have you along. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation with Kartik Mandaville. Kartik is an amazing person. He's built an amazing company, but I got to say, Kartik, you've done a lot of stuff and we're going to get into it in a second. But firstly, thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me. Super excited about this.
Yeah. And whereabouts are you based?
Bangalore from India.
Excellent. But I know your company's going worldwide, so exciting times ahead. Now, Kartik is the founder and CEO of Springworks, which is an amazing HR tech company, which is using blockchain and AI, and we're going to get into that in a second. So you've got quite the background. So graduated from Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh with a master's in language technician institutes. I noted that you had been working on the IBM Watson project, which is kind of famous.
Yeah.
Working on genome analysis with machine learning, which probably feeds into the kind of cool AI that you've been developing, which we'll get to a second. But then lastly, you went to the White House. Is that right?
Yep.
Wow. Tell me about that.
Lucky to be invited. Yeah. So this was part of the immigration reform while Obama was the president in the United States. So I was part of this group trying to kind of improve the immigration, especially for people in the technology space, right? And then happened to be invited to a closed door meeting, around 12 people. And they just wanted to listen, how can we help entrepreneurs build companies in the US and not leave the country, right? They don't want people who have come here, did masters, from top colleges, top schools, and then starting up, creating jobs and stuff like that, and then deciding to leave because of a visa issue or something like that.
Sure. Yeah, very good. Got it. So yeah, tell me about Springworks. It's quite a diverse thing, and we can get into the ChatGPT AI you've developed, but let's take a step back. What is Springworks? How does it help employers to manage some of their HR challenges?
Sure. So we help companies with their background verification and employee engagement. Employee engagement basically covers rewards recognition, employee pulse, productivity, team bonding. And that's where kind of the ChatGPT thing comes up, right? From a productivity perspective, it's a bot, it's your own AI teammate, your own AI agent, for lack of a better word. It's something which kind of connects with all the tools you have, be it Google, Slack, Notion, Asana, Jira, whatever you use, unifies all of that, builds your company wiki, and has a conversational layer on top of it, right? So you can ask whatever questions you want, what you would ask a typical HR or an IT or a finance person. And this would kind of, answer, and it will have an escalation system, things like that. So it saves you a lot of time, saves the HR, saves the manager a bunch of time, helps you even do tasks to a certain degree. It's obviously very futuristic. AI is changing almost every 6 months in terms of, what's coming up, what it can do, getting close to human intelligence at some point. That's the vision. So that's where this is also kind of heading towards, like your teammate. Everyone has their own executive assistant, so it kind of helps you be more productive.
Now, this is not your first rodeo, because I know you've had successful exits from other companies in the tech space, and you're advising. You're like Elon Musk. You're everywhere. How did you know when you're forming Springworks what to create? Because it's a crowded space, right? HR tech.
Yep.
And it's crowded for a reason, because there's demand, there's needs, and the workforce continues to evolve and needs develop. How did you work out what to build, what not to build, and then how to expand from there? So how did you focus on what to build first?
HR tech is evolving every few years, right? COVID came up, and then all the existing things did not work out, right? You had to have new type of HRIS tools, new ways to have leave and work from home, all these policies and things like that. It's just changing so quickly, and I think the best way to kind of build something which people need is to talk to HRs, right? So we run a community for with around 3,000 plus people, where we get all our learnings, right? What is it that you are focusing on this year? Where is the budget going? What are the current challenges? What's already out there in the market which is kind of helping you, but you may want to improve. HRs are generally open to always ideate and experiment, at least talk about it. Change management obviously takes a while because it's one of those things which is kind of integrated across the company. But they generally have, ideas on, okay, how can this improve, right? Everyone wants to improve their job. Everyone wants to improve the, kind of how you interact with employees and how can you better service them, stuff like that.
Yeah. Now, I know you guys are big on educating the market, let's say. And so you've mentioned you've got a community that's, I think it's 3,000 people, sort of HR leaders, HR professionals, and they're in different countries. I think that's an amazing thing. I think you drove that via the podcast, if I'm right.
Yep.
Can you explain what efforts you've been making to educate the market on HR issues and so on? And why have you spent so much time and effort there?
So I think HR is at this interesting place now where you have new age, HRs who are coming up and like they're literally rethinking from the ground up. They're like, okay, there are all these legacy policies and which are not relevant, no longer relevant, especially in a hybrid remote world. Right. And then you have these, folks with 15 years of experience who've kind of been there, have faced issues of, employees kind of misusing, protecting the company, from all of these kind of challenges, be kind of the layer between employees and, and the management. So we realized all of this and it's changing so quickly. So we said, okay, let's start a community and a podcast around this, right? So where we give a voice to folks from both sides, people with 0 to 5 years experience, people with 15 to 25 years experience, where they can talk about problems they have seen, how they have solved it in their own interesting ways, right? Every company, every, HR has one or two unique challenges and problems. And frankly, there's literally nothing, around this in the HR space, right? There's not much information. There's no Twitter or a Reddit or something like that, right? You kind of have to rely on these networks to learn and educate yourself.
Absolutely. Now, I guess it's the dream of lots of companies to create a vibrant and large community of people in their sector, in their market. And heads might turn to things like Salesforce and their massive conferences and things like that. Someone somewhere in your company, and you guys are over 200 people. So at some point, you or some people in the company thought, let's start a community. How did you actually start that community?
Sure. So yes, it started similar to what you said, right? One call, one stand-up call where we said, okay, let's start something like this. We'll put some numbers, we meet these targets, and then we'll take it from there, right? The initial few ones, were just from our existing customers, people we knew through LinkedIn and other social media platforms. We started inviting them, just 10, 15, 20 people, and we said, okay, ask any, questions you have, right? Be it, policies, be it, you're hiring a new employee and we want to check on this one thing, you want to get a new offer letter template, you want to issue options to your employees, you're talking about, I remember one of the early things was election days, right? How do I deal with election days? What type of communication should I be sending? And this is a person with 2 years of experience who had never ever kind of seen something like this. And then someone with 10 years experience and said, this is what you do, this is the regulation, this is what is required. And this HR kind of came back and said, this is my Google. I don't have a better place than this, to kind of ask this type of information. Because if I had gone to Google, it would have shown me a long article, and where I'm not able to have a conversation. My employees are not here to judge, me on my inexperience. And there is an anonymous channel as well if someone does not want to put their name on it. So slowly started spreading from there. Podcast was one way, and then people started doing community calls on their own. Right? People said, okay, I have organized an offsite recently with 150 people. This is my playbook. If anyone else is interested, happy to talk, right? And then 10 people said yes. So we're like, "Okay, let's do a community call." So slowly started spreading from there. People started inviting their friends. HRs are very close knit. Everyone knows each other. They're all kind of helping each other. They move from a company to company. They all kind of have their own relationships and friendships, and, outside of work as well.
And so would you have any advice to people who are thinking of doing something similar in their own country, their own town, their own industry, because they're all different and there's diversity and inclusion and compensation and benefits, etc. What would be your advice if they wanted to do something similar? How would they get that going and accelerate it or use that?
Sure. So I think first thing is you have to be patient. It takes a lot of effort. It's not easy. And at the initial 6 months seems like a drag. Like you have 10, 15, 20, 100 people, and then like, oh, this is too slow, it's not growing, things like that. So you have to be very patient because you want to make sure the culture is set right from day one, right? You're not just inviting everyone, you're talking to people, you're making sure they understand what is the community for, setting up some standards and things like that. So I think patience is one, and it has to be something which at least the marketing or maybe the founders is like some key people have taken up as a project, right? Because if you yourself are not active in the community, then it does not grow. So almost like a turnaround time concept, right? If someone is asking a question and if you don't know the answer, even then that person should at least get the reference to the answer in the next 5 to 10 minutes, right? And sometimes it could be you go learn the topic yourself and then point out to research articles, or you go find an expert in that space and say, I have someone who's asking for this. Can you please help? People will come and ask a question or two. And if they're not getting an answer, they'll be like, this is useless. It's not really helping me, right?
Yeah.
And obviously all the typical stuff, stay away from spam, no promotional, like you have to treat it as a community. You cannot really promote your own product. You have to have like a shameless plug channel, things like that, right? So this very very clear on spam and promotion and stuff like that, because at the end of the day this is outside of their work, right? They're already getting spammed on emails and calls and all of that stuff. So this is one more medium of spam or promotion, they'll quit and they'll probably never come back.
Yeah. Some great advice, patience, planning. You kind of mentioned maybe having some targets or numbers objectives so you know if it's working or not. Yeah, just being respectful of people within that group and supporting them, and then trying to make it a valuable place that they can benefit from and also potentially tell others about to join and so on. So I think that's an excellent idea. And yeah, that's great advice, brothers. Taking a step back on what has helped SpringWorks grow from a marketing perspective, what has worked in terms of different marketing channels? And have you any advice on what's worked and not worked for other companies in the HR space?
Sure. So couple of things I think which have worked very well for us is Google ads based on intent keyword. So performance marketing has generally worked well for us in this kind of space. And there's a lot for us to try and experiment. We've recently started experimenting with conferences, in-person conferences, right? Events and conferences. So I think I am a software engineer myself, so everything to me has to be logical and objective, right? Where if you're putting $1 in, there needs to be a formula to kind of get $1 back in X number of days, right? The problem with conferences and events and all of that, it's all brand, right? Like there is no attribution instantly, or you have to kind of think from a very long-term perspective. So we've yet to kind of see, I guess, success and ROI there, but I think it's just one of those things that you have to do. And sometimes helps your existing customers retain, sometimes helps new customers come in. Very hard to really attribute, but it's one of those advertising. You watch it on a TV or a online place, and you're like, oh yeah, I keep hearing about Springworks every month or so, let me just see what they're up to. Maybe my contract with this existing vendor is up for renewal. I'm not really in the market looking for something new, but I heard about Springworks in that conference, right? Let me just at least talk to them. So I think that's how those conversations start. So I think that is another channel which kind of at least seems to be working, but yet to, I guess, have like a dollar success or a ROI. And then community is a good channel for us, just because even though we do not do any promotional things, but just the fact that people are here in a community known as Shape of Work, run by SpringWorks, people evangelize the product themselves, right? Sometime, someone or the other will come up and say, I want to run background verification, for my company. Who should I work with? And there'll be like three people who will just, say, we should just work with SpringWorks, right? So you kind of get those benefits organically. And then all the other typical channels, we are at the scale where you cannot stay away from cold email and cold calls and LinkedIn as well. So I think typically HRs spend most of their time on LinkedIn. So if you can use that as a channel, obviously it takes patience again. It's not something that you will get results within a month, 2 months, but it takes a while. But it's just one of those things which has to, it needs to be an engine which is constantly being tweaked and working and stuff. But that's a very typical channel that most companies would be using. We've also tried from the employee engagement space. Slack and Microsoft Teams have been great channels for us in terms of marketing. I personally believe they're great distribution channels. Slack has like a probably a million workspaces, million companies using it actively. Maybe Microsoft Teams would probably be 10 times bigger, I guess, at this point. And just having your product out there, it's visibility across so many, right? So I think that's been a great distribution channel for us
On the marketplace, you mean?
on the marketplace. Correct. Yes.
And that's just existing there. And can you pay to promote, or is there any such option?
Sadly, no.
No.
So you just have to make sure your experience is good, you get featured, and get reviews and all those typical ways to kind of organically get featured there.
Got it. And you mentioned LinkedIn there. Were you talking about organic posting and just sharing content there, or are you talking about advertising?
I think both. At this point, we do both. Organic content definitely helps, right? But it has to be true. It has to be transparent. So what we do, internally is our own policies, right? Our own changes or perks or benefits, insurance and whatnot, right? We try to kind of open source all of it and then use that as content. Obviously helps us from a hiring perspective. For us it's a great channel, but more importantly helps us get customers, because other HRs are like, oh yeah, this company is doing something in the HR space. They keep coming up with new policies, new benefits, and they're rethinking how HR should work. That's a company I would like to work with. That's a company whose products I would like to at least explore, stuff like that. I think that's one very good way of kind of use that content channel.
Yeah. And with the LinkedIn ads, are you there from time to time doing campaigns, or are you typically running ads most of the time?
At this point, most of the time, we probably started from campaigns, as you mentioned, high intent keywords. But now at the scale where we are, we are running every single day, because it's more from a brand perspective and then not really like a conversion perspective. So there are different layers, but yeah, most of it is actually just brand awareness.
So you've had to say the word brand about 3 times in this interview so far, and you're a logical guy. Did that give you the cold shivers, or?
Oh yes, yes. It took me a long while to get to learn or even understand what this means or get comfortable with it. So
How did you cross that line? That's a big jump to make. I know lots of business leaders go, well, I don't see a return on this.
I was very late to cross the line. I think what kind of made me cross the line was just hearing people, saw you at this conference. We saw your ad at this place. We saw that you sponsor this one event, right? I think that kind of helps, and not just new customers, also existing customers. And then like the HR feels good. I've sold Springworks to my company. I'm in the company. I've chosen Springworks over other vendors, and my folks are seeing Springworks, so I don't feel I've done the wrong thing, right? You want to be careful about, you want to protect your job, you want to make sure you have taken the right decision as well, right? So I think brand helps from that perspective as well.
Gotcha. Very good. So last couple of questions, just to finish up on the marketing side of things, what would be your advice to other companies in the HR tech space on how to improve their marketing and growth channels? What advice would you share?
I'm a big fan of product led growth. So I think sales is the backup. Sales is always there, which is like sales led, which is email, call, LinkedIn, whatever it is, right? I think that's like a tried and tested channel for HR tech. Whenever we try something new, like let's go with product led, because that's the harder piece. And if you figure that out, then you know you get to your first million, 2 million, 5 million, right? Easily. It's hard, it's not easy, but you put in the effort there, especially in the initial stages, you kind of get those long-term benefits, right? And product led could be, again, using Slack, Microsoft Teams as a distribution channel, building on top of existing HRIS platforms like a Bamboo HR or Gusto, Rippling, any of these ones, right? Everyone has their own marketplace, and that's a great way to kind of get those customers. Sometimes you can do exclusive deals. Sometimes you can do a co-marketed webinar, so you can kind of market to their audience as well. So I think there are, especially in the HR space, where everything is kind of works with each other at some level. There are a lot of different channels to do product led, which takes longer, but once you kind of get the flywheel working, right, you get those benefits long term. Sales is always there, right? And I think sales is something which every single company has to do, and it's just when do you want to start, right? I think the playbook is like it's already out there, but product led is like where it's new, it's upcoming, because all of this was not possible 10 years ago, right? 15 years ago, this concept itself was not there. It did not have open APIs or integrations.
Yeah.
Now, it doesn't matter what size you are, 50 employees or 100,000 employees, your software would have some type of marketplace or integrations, right? If you are able to get there, that's a great way to kind of get distribution.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I've heard it many times now that either co-marketing or integrations marketplaces are such a wonderful opportunity for the tech companies to expand quickly and tap into other audiences. So that's really smart. So final question around the HR side of things. What do you see coming down the road in the world of HR, and what would you suggest that employers do to prepare or be ready to adapt?
Sure. So I think AI is kind of completely going to change on how we work and what the HR's function will be. I think typically HR would have a role around answering employee queries, or at least facilitating that in some way, connecting them to the HRIS and the different tools. I think all of that is just going to go away. That's like literally the what is happening already right now. But 6 months down the line, it's just how we work, how we are interacting with our manager or different team members and stuff like that. I think all the basic questions, all the questions which could have been answered through documentation on a knowledge base or a tool, will be answered through AI. And all the routine work, which is like the boring work, which is like book a meeting, send out invites, kind of update, apply for a leave for me, right? I got married recently, add my wife to my insurance, right? Stuff like that, right? All of those actions are just going to get replaced or done by an AI, right? Every person would have a AI teammate. I think developers already have like the GitHub Copilot, right? That concept of a Copilot, for every single person is just going to happen more and more, right? Maybe we'll start at software engineers. That's what Microsoft has done, but very soon we'll get into marketing, right? Things like can you give me our company logo in SVG PNG format, right? You don't need to go ask a designer for that, right? That's something AI can do. So I think from the HR perspective, from the company's perspective, is be open around it. There are still lots of challenges in terms of privacy, security, safety, right? But I think if you're able to embrace it, be open around it, that this is not going to take away our jobs. It's going to make us better. It's going to help us focus on the creative parts of our job, help us be more productive. Being open about it is going to help those companies kind of succeed, because it is here. It's not 10 years later. It's only going to increase or improve from here, right? It's not going to go away, right? There is no legislation, or there's no regulation, or there's no country which will just shut it down, stuff like that. There'll be some short term things. There'll be obviously there'll be some bans in schools and companies and things like that, but those are just going to be like any other technology, will be fixed within months and whatever, right?
Yeah. I know my way around Google Analytics. So for people listening, that's Google provides an analytical tool that lets you look at website traffic and conversions, all this kind of stuff. But just yesterday I was looking at, and I was using ChatGPT to dump some information into the system. And what might take me clicking around different things and putting different filters on, it told me which was the best day for this and best day for that, and where the source of that traffic was, and why this campaign worked well, why this one didn't. And it did it in seconds. It's kind of insane, which does make me think there will be some job losses, but new jobs will be created. I have to ask, because you're from India, and there's that famous book by Tim Ferriss, and I've forgotten, The 4-Hour Work Week. And in that, he was talking about the whole massive growth in the virtual assistant world. And India's famous for some of that side of that industry. So I suspect that industry could suffer with the rise of ChatGPT and AI and so on. So they will need to evolve possibly down the creative, or I don't know, the facilitative side. I don't know. What do you think?
100%. I think, India, Philippines, Vietnam, a bunch of the countries which have been kind of, this industry has been growing very well for them. Yeah, I think that will have to kind of change, right? Call centers, support centers.
Yeah.
I think at least the first line of defense will probably happen through AI. I think cost and technology and quality has to improve and things like that. But there will be some upskilling, as you mentioned, right? Obviously, maybe existing jobs may go away in some sense, but new jobs will be created, upskilling will be required. And it's just crazy how quickly the space has been changing, suddenly, and it's only going to get better and cheaper from here, right? It's the power of technology.
Absolutely. So Kartik, you've shared so much great stuff, and SpringWorks is going from success to success. So I congratulate you on that. If people want to learn more about SpringWorks, whether that's to potentially partner, refer business in, or to use it as a customer or something else, what should they do next?
Yeah, just visit our website, springworks.in, springworks.in, and that's all the information. And then you can just reach out to us if you would like to partner, kind of sell our services to your clients, or you would like to use some of them yourself.
Brilliant. Excellent. Well, thanks and congratulations for all you've achieved and all the best for what comes next. Thanks.
Thank you so much for having me. It was fun. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us today on A Better HR Business, the podcast that explores the world of HR consulting and HR tech businesses. For show notes and downloads, go to www.getmorehrclients.com/podcast. That's getmorehrclients.com/podcast. Remember to subscribe and share the show with any friends who are busy growing a HR business. Thanks and see you next time.